This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
For the third consecutive day, hundreds of Afghans took to the streets to protest the killings of civilians. This news comes in the aftermath of an airstrike that was launched by the U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan. The vast majority of the protesters were students from local universities in the region of Nangarhar in eastern Afghanistan. For a short period of time, the protesters closed down the main street leading to the region's capital, Jalalabad. This is the second incident of its kind in less than 2 months in the region. The Afghan police confirmed that more than 30 civilians, including women and children, were killed in clashes that erupted over the weekend in the country. Meanwhile, the U.S. military stated that more than 136 Taliban fighters were killed in clashes that erupted in western Afghanistan. The U.S. Army added that dozens of Taliban fighters were also killed and 7 of their positions were destroyed in clashes that lasted nearly 14 hours in the area of Shundand in the Herat province. According to the same source, only 1 U.S. soldier was killed in the clashes.
وفي موضوع متصل أبعدت إيران قسرا آلاف اللاجئين الأفغان المقيمين بصورة غير.
In another development, Iran deported thousands of illegal Afghan refugees. The refugees, who included women and children, returned to their country. Many of the deportees complained that they were rushed to a border area before being allowed to accompany their families or bring food and drink.
والشراب. قمعت قوات الاحتلال مسيرة نظمها العمال الفلسطينيون عند حاجز قلنديا جنوب مدينة رام الله.
The occupation forces quelled a march organized by Palestinian laborers at the Qalandia checkpoint south of Ramallah. They were calling for removing the checkpoint and opening the crossing. The occupation soldiers beat the workers and fired gas canisters, injuring many of them. We are joined by our correspondent, Shireen Abu Akleh, who is near the Qalandia checkpoint, which separates Ramallah from Jerusalem in the West Bank. Shireen, how did this march begin and how did it end?
الفاصل بين منطقتي رام الله والقدس في الضفة الغربية مراسلتنا شيرين أبو عقل. شيرين، كيف بدأت هذه المسيرة وإلى ما انتهت؟
This march, which was organized by the Palestinian Labor Workers Union, took place at this checkpoint where we are standing right now. The aim of the march was to express the importance of removing these checkpoints, which partly contribute to the Palestinian suffering. Hundreds of workers who participated in this demonstration tried to walk through this checkpoint. However, when they reached this crossing point, the Israeli occupation forces closed the gates and then arrested one of the participants. They also attacked these workers and Palestinian figures who participated in the demonstration, including a member of the parliament, Qais Abu Layla, who was beaten by Israeli soldiers. The situation soon became tense, and Israeli soldiers began to intensely fire sound and gas bombs at the demonstrators. As a result, a number of people were injured, including a Palestinian child and one of the press photographers. The aim of this march was to focus on the need to end the siege, whether it be the Israeli siege of imposing hundreds of military checkpoints in Palestinian territories or the international and economic boycott of the Palestinians that has been in place since last year. Labor markets have been closed to the Palestinians. According to Palestinian estimates, currently there are between 206,000 to 250,000 unemployed Palestinians who cannot enter the labor markets into Israel, especially from the Gaza Strip. Therefore, this demonstration aims to first demand that the Palestinian Authority put forth a plan to improve the conditions of workers and provide them with employment opportunities. And second, to demand of the world in general to end this imposed boycott. Furthermore, the poor workers' conditions and the deteriorating Palestinian economy did not commence today. Instead, it began at the start of the Intifada, when Israel began establishing hundreds of military checkpoints and cutting off roads between cities. This has caused business activities to stop, and the investments in the Palestinian territories were reduced. Thus, the economic crisis worsened, and the unemployment rates and poverty rates increased in the Palestinian territories. Today, May 1st, came as an occasion for the workers to raise their voices to end the siege, whether the Israeli siege or the international one, which had been imposed on the Palestinians.
In today's top story, the first resignation in the wake of the Winograd Commission report. It was not the Prime Minister or the Defense Minister who stepped down. It was a junior minister, Eitan Kabel, who is also the Labour Party faction whip in the Knesset. At a press conference in Tel Aviv this morning, Kabel announced his resignation from the government and called on Prime Minister Ehud Olmert to follow suit. The public has lost faith in the Prime Minister, Kabel said. I cannot continue to serve as a minister in a government headed by Olmert. The Prime Minister's office is worried that Kabel's resignation is a signal of his party's intention to bolt the coalition. Labour's Central Committee is set to convene in 10 days' time to discuss the demand by Knesset member Ophir Pines-Paz that Labour resign from the government without delay.
A mass rally calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Olmert and Defense Minister Peretz is being planned for this Thursday in Rabin Square in Tel Aviv. The rally is seen as a crucial test of the Israeli public's determination to pressure Olmert and Peretz to resign. Organizers of the event held a press conference today in the square. These include Reserve General Uzi Dayan's Tafnit movement, reserve soldiers who fought in Lebanon, bereaved parents who lost children in the fighting, the Movement for Quality Government, and citizens groups from both Haifa and Sderot. Organizers are saying if the country's leaders don't leave their positions willingly, then public pressure will force them to do so. Dayan said that he had received several requests from politicians, both from the government and opposition, to speak at the rally. The title of the event will be Failures Go Home.
The verdict is very clear. These people need to go. And it's written on the verdict of this committee. And there is no doubt that this government, unfortunately this Prime Minister, unfortunately this Defense Minister, the Chief of Staff went already home, so these people are not really have the ability to be our leaders anymore.
Prime Minister Olmert today made his first public appearance since the publication of the scathing Winograd report. Olmert attended the ceremony in which Police Commissioner Moshe Karadi was formally replaced by the new police chief, David Cohen. Cameramen were quick to zoom in on Olmert's face as the Prime Minister struggled to stay awake after what must have been one of the most difficult days of his political life.
Prime Minister Olmert will convene a top-level security consultation later today to discuss the Winograd report. Olmert is also meeting throughout the day with the heads of three of his coalition factions, Shas, Israel-Beitenu, and the Pensioners Party. This to try to win their support for his decision to remain Prime Minister, despite the blistering criticism leveled at him by the Winograd Commission. IBA's diplomatic correspondent Leah Zinder reports on Olmert's struggle for political survival.
Ehud Olmert's days in the Prime Minister's office are numbered. That is the consensus today in the media, the political establishment, and inside Olmert's own party, Kadima. This despite the Prime Minister's statement that was videotaped several hours after publication of the Winograd report, in which he declared that he will not resign. The report lambasted the Prime Minister for his failure in judgment, his irresponsibility, and his rashness in leading the nation to war in Lebanon last summer. The shock and strain were all too evident on Olmert's face last night as he said that the report was indeed harsh. Mistakes were made, Olmert said, and I take responsibility for them. I will act to correct the mistakes speedily and in depth. This Wednesday, said Olmert, I will convene a special cabinet meeting and will propose appointing a special task force for implementing the lessons of the report. Olmert's main message, carried to the media by his Kadima supporters today, was the government made the decisions and the government must remedy its own errors. But Kadima insiders are saying today that the game is up, and if not now, if not in response to the public protests being planned, Then after publication of the full Winograd report in a few months' time, Olmert will have to go. The Commission gave Olmert the opportunity to do the right thing, they're saying, but it's clear to all of us the writing is on the wall. Kadima MKs are hoping that Olmert will be replaced by Shimon Peres or by Tzipi Livni to avoid early elections. So far, Olmert's coalition partners, Shas and Israel-Beitenu, say they are standing by the Prime Minister. Like Olmert, Defense Minister Amir Peretz also huddled with his aides last night to decide what to do in the wake of the report that charged the Defense Minister with almost total ignorance concerning security affairs and of weakening the government's ability to deal effectively with its enemies. According to Labour sources, the option of Peretz resigning right away was discussed, but when Peretz was handed a note saying that Olmert was not stepping down, the Defense Minister said he too would continue at least until the Labour primaries on May 28th. Leah Zinder for IBA News.
Well, less than 24 hours after the publication of the Winograd interim report, many Israelis are expressing their dissatisfaction with Prime Minister Olmert's decision not to resign. Today's newspaper headlines predict that the Prime Minister will have to step down eventually in the wake of the devastating conclusions against him contained in the report. According to a survey conducted by Israel Radio, 69% of the population believe that Olmert should resign, and 74% think that Defense Minister Amir Peretz should also leave his post. A Channel One survey revealed that the country's trust in their political leaders is extremely low. 82% do not trust the Prime Minister, and 91% do not trust the Defense Minister.
I think that Olmert and Peretz must go home, and sooner is better, because if they will not go by themselves, I think the people of Israel will show them the way out.
What happened is what we all knew a long time ago, and I'm happy that Winograd had the courage to say the words that we all felt.
True national responsibility will be to stay in the recent situation and to try to make the best out of it. And I think that Israel should go to elections every 2 years, and politicians make mistakes, and I don't see anyone that can do better than them.
رائحة الحرب اشتمها اللبنانيون أو تذكروها على الأقل بعد صدور تقرير القاضي فينوغراد.
Ever since the release of the Winograd report, which holds Prime Minister Ehud Olmert responsible for the failure of the war in Lebanon, the Lebanese have been fearing a renewed war. They view the report as part of an Israeli political game aimed at creating a pretext for launching another war on Lebanon, a country which hasn't yet healed from the wounds left by the last war. Elia Ibrahim reports from Beirut.
The Lebanese reaction to the Winograd's report was calm because it didn't add anything new. It did not yet lead to any resignation or trial that may affect the situation in Lebanon one way or another, at least in the short term.
I think that this report opens the door to the possibility of another war between Israel and Lebanon, or perhaps between Israel and Syria, based on the recent maneuvers along the Israeli-Lebanese borders and along the Israeli-Syrian borders. Another concern is that this report may cause Olmert's government to collapse, leaving the door open for Netanyahu, who has been trying to launch another war in Lebanon to re-establish the image of the Israeli army as an undefeatable military force.
The Lebanese decided to relax in their own ways. Some strolled along the waterfront alone, while others were accompanied by their families. All the Lebanese are concerned that another war may take place, and many are not confident in what the future may hold. Some fear that another war may erupt by next summer.
They're trying to re-establish the image of their army as the undefeatable military force. I think that they want to prove this.
The people we interviewed told us that the most important point in the report is holding Israeli leaders responsible for the failure of the war, especially Ehud Olmert, whose administration was described as a failure.
It is good that they are trying their officials, and I hope that we can do the same. I hope that we also try everyone who harms citizen security.
While the Lebanese agree that Israel has failed in its war, they differ on whether the last last war can be considered a Lebanese victory. Some believe that the Lebanese have failed and lost just like the Israelis did. The summer is approaching. The war may or may not come, but also there might be other explosions, assassinations, or kidnappings. Today, the Lebanese have their sea and sky. They're enjoying their holiday while the temporary peace lasts. In his report, Winograd described the way Ehud Olmert dealt with the war on Lebanon as a severe failure in exercising judgment, responsibility, and caution. Meanwhile, Ehud Olmert confirmed that he will not step down from his position as Israel's prime minister. The only effect the report may have is to mount pressure on Olmert to resign as the head of the Kadima party. Having said that, this news may help repair the party's image and prevent internal division.
The Winograd Commission, which was assigned by Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, announced its interim report into the failing of the Second Lebanese War. Winograd tried to break the news softly, but he could not find better words than these. The Prime Minister is responsible for the war, and his judgment is characterized as serious failure in responsibility and prudence, and the goals for the campaign were not set out clearly or carefully. While the report described Israel's Defense Minister Amir Perez as not having knowledge or experience in the military, it described Dan Halut, the former chief of staff for the Israeli army, as hasty.
We hold the prime and defense ministers and the chief of staff for the Israeli army responsible.
The chief of staff for the Israeli army has resigned, and the defense minister Amir Perez is expected to follow suit after the elections of the Labour Party. However, Israel's prime minister Ehud Olmert does not plan to resign from his post. Olmert, who is backed by his Kadima party, plans to carry out a campaign to keep his party intact and hold everyone responsible for the war.
Olmert's opponent Netanyahu will replace him in the event he is forced to resign. Therefore, Kadima wanted to rally behind Olmert at this time.
The final findings will be announced in 4 months, and Kadima is likely to ask Olmert to resign. Many Israelis, though, were not surprised by the findings of the report.
It's a big shame.
It is a big shame that our leaders failed to carry out their responsibilities.
Meanwhile, the big question remains, how far will the Israeli public go to force Olmert out of office? It seems that history has repeated itself. The former Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir refused to assume responsibility or resign from her position in the aftermath of the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. However, Israelis took to the streets and demanded her resignation. Consequently, Ehud Olmert may face the same fate as that of his predecessor, and all eyes are now focused on the Israeli public to do just that. Sharouk Assad, Dubai TV, Occupy Jerusalem.
القدس المحتلة.
Judge Eliyahu Winograd, the head of the Israeli Commission of Inquiry into the conduct of the latest war on Lebanon, held Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, his War Minister Amir Peretz, and the former Chief of Staff Dan Halut directly responsible for the failure of the aggression. During a press conference in which Winograd presented his report, he said that the war on Lebanon was carried out without a clear plan and sufficient preparations. Hundreds of Israeli protesters demanded the resignation of Olmert, who is in an awkward and weak position.
What a leader. He planned the July attacks on Lebanon through these binoculars. The result of this war was crowned with the Winograd report, which cost the former Chief of Staff Dan Halut his position even before it was made public. It seems that it will also do the same to Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and his War Minister Amir Perez. The Israeli army, which was equipped with a massive arsenal and which received the largest military support from Washington, could not defeat the Lebanese resistance, which launched more than 4,000 missiles into Israel-raped Palestinian lands. The Lebanese resistance shocked this army and created fear in it. The legend that the Israeli army can't be defeated was shattered. During the 33-day war, hundreds of Lebanese resistance fighters were sincere in their vows to God. They killed more than 120 Israeli soldiers and many others inside Israel. The Israeli war machine and American-made weapons killed more than 1,200 Lebanese civilians who were living peacefully in their homes. Homes, bridges, roads, hospitals, worship places, and ambulance vehicles were all destroyed. Despite all this destruction, the Winograd Inquiry Commission held Olmert and his war partners directly responsible for the failure to achieve the stated goals of stripping Hezbollah of its weapons and the returning of 2 Israeli soldiers. The failure of the Israeli war on Lebanon has forced the enemy leaders to confess their bad intentions and acknowledge that the war was actually planned before the 2 Israeli soldiers were taken as hostages by Hezbollah. The Winograd Inquiry Committee, which questions 70 enemy officials, will hold the war partners accountable. They're currently fighting for their survival due to a political tsunami which was created by several factors. First, the lack of preparations taken by the enemy army to defend its civilians since the year 2000 until the July aggression on Lebanon. Second, the responsibility of launching an unsuccessful war. Third, the failure of the political and military leadership in managing the war. Olmert's popularity reached 2% at a time when the popularity of his foreign minister, Tzipi Livni, reached more than 30%. Despite this, Olmert had announced that he'd planned to stay in office even before the Winograd's report was released. He also has disclosed his intention to hold a meeting with ministers from his party, Kadima, in order to reach a united strategy to deal with the report. In addition, Olmert, who formed the Winograd's Inquiry Committee, is actually facing corruption charges. Despite this, he is now defending his position during the war by saying that the July aggression on Lebanon succeeded because of the large magnitude of destruction it caused to Lebanon. He also pointed out to the UN Security Council Resolution 1701, as well as the resulting deployment of the Lebanese army in Lebanon. Olmert's attempt to claim victory is like someone trying to block the sunlight with one finger. However, one question should be directed to those Lebanese who share Olmert's views, that the Lebanese resistance must be disarmed and that the Lebanese army must be deployed along the borders. Are they going to be more accurate than Winograd in their assessment of the war?
ادعت صحيفة يدعوت أحرنوت الإسرائيلية
The Yed'ot Ahronot Israeli newspaper claimed that Syria has secretly established underground ballistic missile sites, which include rockets and launchers capable of striking anywhere in Israel. The publication added that, according to military experts, Syria has erected large underground bunkers built with fortified concrete that are capable of housing more than 30 factories and laboratories to produce and develop weapons. The newspaper report contended that should a conflict arise between Syria and Israel, the latter has more aerial superiority, and this may explain the reasons why Damascus wanted to produce ballistic missiles.
Israeli media leaked reports that Syria has established large underground missile sites, which include ballistic missiles capable of striking anywhere in the Hebrew state. The report, which was published by the Yed'ot Ahronot newspaper, stirred fear among Israelis. According to the report, the underground complex includes more than 20 bunkers built with fortified concrete and houses several military laboratories and factories to produce and develop ballistic missiles. The report did not give a specific location of the alleged Syrian weapon production facility.
سوريا لن تقف مكتوفة الأيدي ولن تستمر إلى لا نهاية.
Syria will not remain silent forever. It does not want to remain in an endless state of no peace, no war. Our land is still occupied and we have the right to make full preparations to liberate it.
هذه الأرض.
المخاوف الإسرائيلية وتجيش الرأي العام الإسرائيلي بعد سلسلة الإخفاقات التي أعقبت حرب تموز على لبنان.
Israel's fear and setbacks following its war on Lebanon last July have echoed in Damascus. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad said last year that his country will not accept the no peace, no war situation in the Golan Heights. Assad also said that the victory of Hezbollah has stirred emotions among those who want to liberate the Golan Heights militarily if no peaceful solutions are reached. Israel believes that Syria possesses nearly 200 Scud-B and 60 Scud-C missiles, as well as several Scud-D missiles. Scud-D missiles, which have a range of 700 kilometers and are equipped with chemical warheads, were acquired from North Korea. Meanwhile, Syria expressed doubt that Israel will ever abide by an international resolution that lacks U.S. support.
أمريكي مفقود.
إن التماهي
في سياسات العنف والقوة التي تلجأ إليها واشنطن وتل أبيب.
The policy of excessive use of power and violence adopted by Washington and Tel Aviv pose threats to world security and stability, as demonstrated in European public polls in the past few years. This bullying policy also hampers peace efforts in the region.
Israel's military institution believes that its air force has more superiority and war advantage over its Syrian counterpart. However, Israel fears that in the event of a military showdown with Syria, Damascus will use Chinese-made C-802 missiles that it acquired from Iran. Last summer and during Israel's war on Lebanon, Hezbollah launched a C-802 missile into Israeli territorial waters, damaging one naval ship. It seems that the Syrian top-secret military arsenal has stirred fear inside Israel. Assad has repeatedly extended his hand in peace to Israel, but the latter rejected it. Meanwhile, doubt and speculation continue to overshadow the relationship between the two rival neighbors.
On the eve of National Teachers' Day in Iran, President Mahmoud Ahmedinejad awarded top teachers in a ceremony on Tuesday, honoring them for the efforts they make to educate the new generation.
آینده‌ساز موفق و نمونه کشور جناب آقای محمد غفرانی توفیق داد.
In an address to the participants, President Ahmedinejad said Iran attaches great importance to teachers, urging authorities to step up efforts to solve their problems. The president also called on teachers and officials at the Education Ministry to make every effort to help the Iranian youths develop their potential. President Mahmoud Ahmedinejad also said the Zionist regime is a manifestation of state terrorism, genocide and crimes. Addressing the First International Congress on the Culture of Resistance, the president said despite the systematic crimes committed at the hands of Israel in Lebanon and the Palestinian territories, Tel Aviv enjoys full support of certain bullying powers. But Ahmedinejad added the same powers termed the legitimate defense of Palestinians and legal resistance of the Lebanese against Israeli aggression as terrorist operations. He said several hundred people fall victims of terrorism in Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine and Lebanon each day, adding organized terrorism was developed in Iraq by the foreign force to pave the way for its continued occupation. The president said if justice is administered throughout the globe, no reason will be left for violence and terrorism. Iranian workers celebrated the Labor Day on Tuesday in step with their peers around the world. At the close of the ceremony in Tehran, a statement released by laborers condemned with one voice warmongering policies of the U.S. The workers also urged government and parliament to do what it takes to improve the living standards of laborers. The statement also said nations can be refused access to modern technologies under empty pretexts. Workers and students took to the streets for May Day rallies that stuck to tradition but also showed how the world is changing. In Cuba, ralliers carrying posters reading anti-Bush slogans called for unity among people and anti-American defiance in the Latin American country. Police fired in the air to disperse crowds demanding labor rights in the Macau enclave of China, while in the United States, where May Day is usually ignored, activists plan to march for illegal immigrants' rights. Protesters called for better pensions in Greece, work safety in Italy, and more HIV medication in Zimbabwe. Apart from Macau, clashes also flared in Istanbul and Berlin. In Germany, union leaders said 500,000 people joined rallies and criticized Chancellor Angela Merkel's Conservative Party for resisting efforts to introduce a minimum wage. Police detained 119 people in Berlin for acts such as throwing bottles, stones, and firecrackers at authorities.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only.